Hey everybody, I just wanted to make a little instructional video. It's going to have two parts. This first part explains to you or reviews with you the concepts that we've been studying this week. And then the second part is actually going to show you how to do the assignment that you're supposed to be working on today. So let's go ahead and get started with part one. Congruent shapes. First of all, a congruent shape is the same shape and the same size. It has to be the same shape and the same size in order to be congruent. So we see two triangles here on the left. They're different colors, but they are the same type of triangle, and they're the same size. Here on the right-hand side, we have two squares. This one's turned a little bit, but they're still the same shape. They're still both squares, and they're still the same size squares. Just because they're turned in a different direction doesn't change the fact that they're the same shape and the same size. So a non-congruent shape would be maybe a shape one's bigger and one's smaller. It doesn't have to be a big difference, but one is bigger and one is smaller. They're not congruent. Here's another example right here, these two shapes. They're both polygons, but this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides, and this one only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. So they are not the same shape, even though they're close to the same size. So these shapes here are not congruent. Now, let's talk about those three transformations that we've been learning this week. First of all, in order to be able to be one of these three transformations, you have to be congruent. So if the shapes are not congruent, then automatically we know it can't be a translation, rotation, or reflection. And in parentheses here, I put those words, the more simple words that these are called. So a translation could be called a slide, a rotation could be called a turn, and a reflection can be called a flip. But you do need to know their real names. So let's look at each of these examples with my nifty pictures of a cat. I just thought this was a nice, obvious example of each one of these things. So translation, also known as a slide. This is where the shape just simply slides from one side of the, sometimes you have graph paper, it'll just say one side of the area to the other side of the area. There's no turning that goes in place. There's nothing at all that changes except for where it's at on the page. So if I said, hey, will you slide that across the table to me? And if you simply just put your hands on it and slid it straight over to me, whether it was straight across or left to right or diagonal, it stayed in the same direction. It just slid right across the table. No other changes were going to happen. That is the definition and an example of a translation. Now, the next one is a rotation. This is just when things turn. So you can see the first cat right here is sitting there, and the arrow directs you to it turning on its side to the second location. It's still the same picture, it's still the same size, it's still the same shape. It just simply goes from this area and turns to the other area. It can turn in either direction in order for it to be a rotation, but it's just a turn. Our third example is a reflection. Now this is just like looking in a mirror. These two cats are exactly the same shape, they're exactly the same size. It's as if there was a mirror being held up right here. Remember, if you see a line going down the middle in between the two, then that's called the line of reflection, which is easy because we're talking about reflection, so it makes sense. And so just like when you look in the mirror, things have flipped. Another example of this that you can think of are your hands. If you look down at your hands, they're congruent, they're the same shape, they're the same size, generally speaking. Your gloves would be the same shape and the same size, but your thumb is on one side and you're on one hand and your thumb is on the other side on the other hand. They're a mirror image of each other. So this is a reflection. So that's the examples of translation, rotation, and reflection. Now we're going to see if you can remember these three concepts as we go to part B of our video. So stay tuned. Hey guys, you're not able to see me in this part of the video because I really need you to focus on the screen. My screen looks almost exactly like yours once you get into your Google Drive. Okay, so what we're doing today is we're working on this file right here that's called Congruent Translation Practice. So we're going to open up this file. Once you get this file open, these directions are written right here in front of you in case you forget. It says make a copy of this slideshow. Go to File, which is over here, and click Make a Copy right here. It's going to ask you to name your copy, or it will automatically name it Copy of Congruent Translation Practice. If you want to put your name on this, you can say, and I will use Shamir as an example. You might type in your name, so Shamir Congruent Translation Practice. And then once you have this taken care of, you're going to click OK. And it's going to make a copy of it in your file so that you're not messing up anybody else's stuff. So it's really, really important that you do this step before you do absolutely anything else. All right, so I've made a copy, and now the directions say sort each set of pictures into their correct category. Share this with Mrs. Reese, and then my email address is right there. So how do you sort each set of pictures into their correct category? Well, let's look at the next slide. The next slide says make a text box and label each shape as rotation, reflection, translation, or none. And I do want you to actually use the whole word rotation, the whole word reflection, and the whole word translation, or the whole word none. I do not want abbreviations used. It says there are 12 shapes. There will be at least one of each of those answers used. So you're going to use rotation at least once. You're going to use reflection at least once. You're going to use translation at least once, and you're going to use none at least once. Most of them are used more than once. Look carefully at the shapes. The first thing you have to ask yourself is, are the shapes congruent? Because if they're not congruent, it's automatically going to be none. Because in order to have a rotation, reflection, or translation, you have to have congruent shapes. So let's do the first one together so that I can show you how to do a text box, just in case you've never done that before. So here's our first set. I have these two shapes. I've got to look, are they congruent? They look pretty much the same to me. If I'm wondering, I can always use the graph to kind of count. So I can say this one's 2 squares across at the top, this one's 2 squares across at the top, this one's 3 across at the bottom, this one's 3 across at the bottom. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 high. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4 high. So it looks like they're congruent. So now I have to decide, is this a slide or a translation? Did it just slide from one side of my graph paper to the other? Is it a rotation? Has it turned? Or is it a mirror image? Is it a reflection? Well, I think that this is a slide because it looks like it just went from right here and just slid right across diagonally to being right here. There was no turning or anything like that. So in order to make a text box, I have to come right over here, and I need to click this little T that's inside a box. Once I click that, I get an arrow. I just click and draw a box down here. And then I have to type the word translation. Okay, now if you want to make it bigger, then you can highlight it. And just like in a Word document, you can come over here to the size and make it bigger so that it's really, really nice and visible. So there you go. Translation for the number 1 is the answer. So everybody will at least get that one right. And I have confidence that you guys will get all of these correct. And if you need to rewind to go back to the review portion of this video so that you can remember what each thing means, then go ahead and do that. Now, once you have answered all of these shapes, you're going to type your name using a text. It's already got a text box. All you have to do is click right here, and then you're going to type your name, and then you're done. Done. Now all you have to do is share it with me. I'm going to go ahead and delete my name off of this. But once you're finished, you're going to go up here to File, and you're going to go to the word share, and you're going to type in, once it loads, my email address, which remember is reeseam@lcsedu.net, and then you're going to hit send, and it's going to send it right to my inbox so that I can grade it. So go ahead and review the first part of this video if you need to, and get started, because we do have another activity that we will be doing. Directions for that one will be on the board. See you guys later.